Hey y'all, it is Taylor Bridges here back with another review of Ready to Love Season 7, Episode 8, Nair in the Hair. Nair in the Hair. This episode, it gave. I have a lot to say. I definitely overthought a lot this episode, so be ready. But if you'll be so kind, please like, comment, subscribe, come check me out, come rock with me, okay? We're reviewing all the fun shows, talking our ish and all that good stuff. Did y'all watch the 100th episode last week? I thought it was really nice. I loved seeing the flashbacks of all the old couples, especially because I think I started showing my boyfriend Ready to Love around like season 5. And so he wasn't impressed, but I was like, no, this show used to really be something. Like, it used to be about sexy singles coming on, really wanting love and a serious relationship. It wasn't all those gimmicks back then. You know, it was real adults with real jobs and genuine intentions. And so I actually showed him seasons 1 and 2. And we actually watched that recently. So all of the mess is still on my mind. Think about London, Divine, and Alexis. Then you had Reva, Tandy, and Mario. And that was all one season. That was one season, and that was so explosive. Like, those first 2 seasons were super good back when they had the couples like in one space for the majority of the time. And I think obviously since COVID things have changed, but it was so much better back then. So I say all that to say I just recently watched those earlier seasons, so to see so many flashbacks, it was really cool because all of that stuff was fresh on my mind. I was like, oh yes, that reunion with Tandy and Mario and Reva was hot. It was spicy. Oh my gosh. The episode starts with the ladies in the lounge. Tommy tells the ladies that they have to introduce their connection to their ex. And this is always one of the more entertaining tasks of the season. So I'm really excited. It's usually some type of hot mess, and it reveals a lot about both the person introducing the ex and the person that the ex is meeting. So Jeffrey does ask Tommy if she can wait back and speak to him privately. She ends up telling him she was with her ex for 12 years out of high school, then dated somebody else for 3 years. These men are both the fathers to her children. The first one she has 2 kids with. The second one, she gave him his first child. The first father, they haven't seen or heard from him in 6 years. Mind you, this is the one she had a 12-year relationship with. And then the second dude, once he found out she was pregnant, basically said he couldn't be with her due to his career. It'd be too difficult. So first thing I realized is that Jeffrey has probably never been single until after her 3rd child. Because to be with someone for 12 years and another one for 3 years, and she's only 32, if we add a year in between those relationships, that would put Jeffrey at about 16 that she started her first relationship. Even if we start the relationship at 14, when she would have been about a freshman in high school, 12 years later puts her at 26. So after that relationship at 26, let's say at the youngest, she spent half of the last 6 years in a relationship. So she spent 3 years single. They say it takes about a third of the time of the relationship to heal. So from a 12-year relationship, especially out of high school, she likely was imprinted on. So a third of that time would be a minimum 4 years to heal before getting back out there. Most people aren't waiting that long, so I don't judge her necessarily for that, but she needs a father figure for those kids. Let's be real. Early 30s with 3 kids, she's probably not in a position to date casually. There's no time for that. She has no paternal assistance for the kids. So that slims down her options tremendously, unfortunately, because that takes a specific guy. The guy has to have the time and patience because those kids come first and she has to tend to them. But there is something about going from a 12-year relationship to a 3-year relationship, taking up all your teenage years and your 20s. That's a bit unsettling. It speaks to something about Jeffrey. Perhaps her discernment, perhaps her choices. I know that she's trying to conceal it, but our pasts tell a story about us. No, we are not our pasts, but it is reliable data as to who and why we are who we are today. And I think she's trying to conceal a lot of that. She's trying to conceal a lot of who she is on this show, and it's for a reason. She keeps up appearances well physically, but something tells me that Jeffrey might have a lot of trauma and sadness within her. I could be wrong, but this is what my gut says. And I do think it's wise for her not to bring her children's fathers on the show. Y'all need to have a totally different conversation that has nothing to do with coming on this show for camera time and clout. Tommy does tell her to either find an ex or to introduce, or to tell the guys that she's interested in about her past and why she's not bringing an ex on the show for them to meet. Morgan is bringing a dude she dated 3 years ago. Y'all. We're about to get into this one. Morgan is bringing a dude she dated 3 years ago to meet Tony and Lyndon. Why is Lyndon still on the show? But as soon as I asked myself that, Morgan said her relationship with Junior was superficial, which to me is code for sexual and or material. And that's why she has the most superficial dude, Tony here. And that's why she has her most superficial connection, Lyndon, here. Morgan seems to have learned nothing in the past 3 years. Junior asks Lyndon what he likes about Morgan. Lyndon says everything. And Morgan found that sweet. Does that not summarize exactly how these two have been maneuvering this whole show? We know they haven't gotten to know each other. They probably just giggle a lot when they're around each other, but nothing else is going on. Lyndon hasn't even taken Morgan out on a romantic solo date yet. We haven't seen them kiss. Morgan is just holding on to him. So she has another option on the show other than Tony. We all know this. Tony walks in. He looks bothered and or tired right when he walks in. He's not smiling at all. So I immediately thought, goodness, I hope this doesn't go left. But it ends up going pretty okay. Tony says he wasn't impressed by Junior, saying he's a short dude. And I rolled my eyes so hard. First of all, he looked taller than Tony when they were both seated. But then again, Junior didn't stand up to shake either man's hands, so he might be a little miniature. But also, Tony has no leg to stand on. He's no looker, if you ask me. Tony is no looker. Him and Junior are about the same level of attraction. Take that how you want. Yes, Junior looks a little weird with the braids on such a peculiar head shape, but he's fresher than Tony. Junior looks about Lyndon's age, which is right up Morgan's alley. And that's because I think Morgan wants to be a 40-year-old city girl. Junior asks Tony what he likes about Morgan. Tony says their physical attraction and they have a spiritual connection. Morgan then wants Junior to say what he likes about her. But I'm thinking, is that helpful? Is that necessary? Does it matter at this point? That would have been a bit awkward for me if I'm on a date meeting a guy's ex and the ex starts saying all these things she likes about him. Like, go be with him. Go be with him. I would only care why I like you. I'm good. I want to know why I like you. If I had to show up as the ex for one of the guys that I dated, I'd make the date about him and his future in the women, about him and his future with the women that he's interested in. They could ask me things about him and I'd answer honestly, but I'm not about to get all romantic talking about why I like him, love him, and all that. Y'all remember last season when LJ's ex came on and they were still having sex and practically dating? That's what it gives when the exes start going down memory lane and and it's just uncomfortable and unnecessary. Instead, just speak to Morgan and who she is as a person in general from the time y'all had together. But I think honestly, the specifics, at least while like everybody's present, is just kind of awkward. Like the vibe that Tony ended up getting, that I got that vibe from watching on my couch. Like, okay, do y'all need a room? Do y'all need a room or something? Like, Junior also says that Morgan is crazy. This woman put Nair in his hair because she thought he was cheating. First, were they even together officially? because I was under the impression they said that Morgan was looking for fun. Junior wanted something more serious, and that's kind of where they left it. So I was only under the impression that Junior wanted to be serious, but Morgan didn't. But maybe I'm assuming that's how it went down. Perhaps they ended up getting serious once he stated that they wanted to be serious. But I'm glad they find it funny, because I don't. He's right. She is crazy. And she was only a few years younger than what she is now doing that. I just know that if a man did that to a woman, it'd easily be viewed as abuse or assault. It's actually not cool at all, because that's that man's hair. His like literal property. And the fact that I wasn't surprised at all that Morgan would do something like that tells me that I've been spot on about Morgan since the beginning. She likes drama, she's immature, and she thinks this sort of behavior is cute. And even if he was cheating, naring his hair off is what I'd call the first physical blow. She struck the first blow. But if he were to react, he'd be villainized. And I'm not male identified. I'm being fair. I'm not male identified in the slightest. I have little brothers. I have an uncle I grew up with, my mom's little brother, in the house who helped raise me. And I've seen this sort of stuff happen to men close to me. They end up feeling helpless because, women, get their feelings hurt and they end up bleaching clothes, deflating tires, all this crazy stuff in a fit of rage. But if the guy responds in any way, they're a B word, they're abusive, all these horrible things. I don't think it's right. And Morgan gives me, she doesn't know how to keep her hands to herself. And that's a dangerous woman for any black man to associate with. I am so serious. People need to get in control of their emotions. But we're all going to laugh it off like she's not immature AF for that. That's why his braids are at the struggle length now. He had to start all over. I wonder, but I highly doubt if she even apologized to him for doing that. But women, we have to stop justifying destroying people's stuff in a fit of rage because we're cheated on. I know it's easier said than done, but it's not worth it. You're going to run into the right dude that's going to call the police on your behind and have you looking stupid. A whole charge on your record because you want to, like Judge Toller say, pay the stupid tax. Look at how DaBaby treated Danny Lee. It was lame, yes, but it was better than tussling around with her and retaliating and ruining his success even more. I'd do the same thing. I'm not ruining all I worked for just to get back at no fool. It sounds cliche, but the biggest flex is no longer giving people access to you. You'll be boiling inside for a little while because you want to get your lick back, but ultimately you would have made the healthiest legal decision just to cut your losses and move on and experience the benefit of not having somebody like that in your life anymore. And yes, it's really easier said than done, but also not really if that drama isn't what you own anymore. I personally wouldn't have the energy to do any of that. But this whole women abusing men and it be a laughing matter isn't cool to me. And we're going to keep it fair over here. Plus, women need to keep in mind that men are much more petty. Much more petty. See, women will play that game, calling the cops and, saying never mind, he did this, never mind, recant the statement. Men, they will let them handcuff you and teach you a lesson. You hurt they pockets. Don't mess around. Don't go out here looking stupid for these dudes. Get your behind locked up. It's not worth it. It's really not. Junior asked them what would they do different than what he did this time around, and somebody should have answered, file charges and have her arrested. If she nared me, what Sharice say last year? Barbecue. We're gonna barbecue you. You're getting. I'm filing charges. You nair my hair off. Could you imagine? That's so. Oh my gosh. Have some self-control. Lyndon says, He pretty much just give her honesty. That's what he do differently. Tony said he'd give her communication. Lyndon and Tony agreed that had Morgan and Junior not lacked the honesty and communication that I guess Tony and Lyndon would give her, they wouldn't be here. And I agree. Morgan and Junior definitely have lingering energy. And like Tony said, Morgan's words aren't matching her actions. Morgan's the one who wanted to keep it casual and fun, yet she behaved like the scorned wife. How? If I were Tony, I'd be concerned about her retaliating if she got eliminated off the show, or, like seriously, Morgan says the way Tony handled the situation with meeting her ex hurt the two of them. And I'm like, you mean hearing that you are crazy, willing to nair a dude's hair off for going out when you are the one who wanted to keep it just fun and casual? I'm sure Tony is seeing a lots of parallels in the behavior that Junior described and the behaviors Morgan has directly displayed. And the fact that Tony's behind is taken aback by Morgan's actions says a lot. I'd be willing to bet the only reason Morgan and Junior wouldn't date anymore is if Junior didn't want to. Because Morgan lives for a dude that will let her be toxic and dramatic in peace. Cynthia and her ex / the father to her children, James, pull up to meet Dre and Anthony. And initially I'm thinking this is a great call. These two know each other well. They have children together. They clearly get along as co-parents. This should be fun for the two of them to experience it together. Like it's on a TV show. It's fun. Like, why not, right? And this dynamic is ideal when dating someone with children, especially if you don't have any children. Somebody that's, already just dating somebody who has a great relationship with the parent to their child. And they cool enough for you to be able to meet them at dinner, have drinks, and all get along. Like, that's ideal, right? And James is ultimately a good person to help Cynthia. Initially, what I thought James would be a good person to help Cynthia gauge these men, because one of these men could potentially be around his children, the children they share together. So it behooves him to properly help vet these dudes, respectfully help vet these dudes, because he'd ideally have the kids' best interests at heart. So James immediately sees Andre and calls out the shag, and I'm thinking, I like him already, but I also like Andre too. I think Andre might end up being full of ish, but so far he really hasn't been that bad. The ladies adore him, and he has seemed pretty sweet and gentleman-like thus far. That's it. That's what Andre has given me so far. He's like the most romantic on the show. Like, even before he went on COVID, he was already romanticizing Cynthia. So he's coming with it. He's done it the most consistently, I would say. Well, he's done it twice. Who else has done it? I know Tony and Morgan have gone out, but Andre gives a little razzle dazzle with his dates. I think his are very intimate, and I really like that. So at the meeting, the energy is immediately about to shift, because while Andre begins to answer the questions that James is asking, James tells him to speak up in a sort of aggressive, hostile manner. And it was unsettling. And I know if someone used that exact tone with me, I catch it right away and I set it straight. Don't talk to me like that. James is already starting off tense, and that's not even called for at this moment. James is asking this dumb stuff like, how do I know you're not acting? And how do I know you're not telling the truth? What kind of questions are these for this moment? You don't know if he's acting or not. That's the point. You don't know him. So you're supposed to ask him questions to form your own opinion after a considerable amount of time, and after hearing his answers to, a number of questions. I'm thinking, James, how do you want this conversation to go? Because I can't imagine he expects it to go well. With him speaking to a grown man, like Andre is one of him and Cynthia's kids. And you already know they say, male energy is really heavy with each other. So, they're both like alphas, right? I'm a woman, a feminine woman at that. And I would even be like, you coming at me too heavy, bruh. So I can imagine a grown man, like, because I'm a grown woman, very feminine. I'd be like, I wouldn't, like, you being you doing too much. Anthony finally arrives, and James was tense with him too. He didn't want to make eye contact when dapping him up. He didn't stand up. Andre starts to try to tell James about himself and give him a full picture. So he begins to speak about his entrepreneurship. But James is like, I didn't ask you about that. And I thought that was just plain rude. Who does James think he is? First of all, this is a reality dating show. Cynthia is not Andre's woman. All this energy is highly disrespectful if you ask me. I think James is actually showing out for the cameras. James, be careful. That behavior can get your behind whooped on or off camera. Anthony mentions his first kid, and James asked, why didn't him and the mother of his daughter work out? I hope James is prepared to answer that question himself. Anthony says that they neglected each other due to focusing on their child and their careers. And James asks how many women has he had around his daughter since breaking up with the mother of his daughter. And Anthony says one woman. But that's not good enough for James. Then he wants to ask the dudes, what are they bringing to the table? Andre says he doesn't bring anything to the table yet because they're still getting to know each other. On one end, I see how that isn't something Cynthia wants to hear, right? She's serious about this process and she's really feeling Andre. On the other end, I totally get it because it's true. That's actually why I'm confused why James has so much energy right now. They are still in the process of dating multiple people. And honestly, he's still trying to gauge what Cynthia brings to the table herself. He's still trying to gauge if he likes her. They're getting to know each other. Because so far, Cynthia has 2 kids with a rowdy baby father that she's bringing to the table with her. And yes, Andre is cocky about it. Yes, he's mentioning Forbes and all that over and over and over. Andre, you're still single with the shag, sir. Calm it down. But ultimately, I think that question, what are you bringing to the table, would have been better coming from Cynthia. Besides, I think Cynthia might have gotten a different answer from Andre asking it herself. Because by this point, I imagine Andre is fairly agitated. And he's not in the lovey-dovey mode. He was caught off guard with the tension. So his gentle side has left the building. And honestly, I'd be the same way. I see exactly why Andre left the way he did. He didn't even hug Cynthia goodbye. But I do think he left respectfully before things turned left. And yes, he left. He was it was a bit more emotional than what we saw from some of the other dudes. But I'm not going to lie, James was pressing. And I think Andre's reaction was him really trying to keep it cool. And honestly, I see it. Like, James wouldn't have gotten me so worked up. But honestly, I do see it like man to man. Like, you doing too much, bruh. Because if a woman no, that it would have been shut down. I'd have been left. No, not having it. You're not talking to me like that. Nope. I actually wouldn't be surprised if Andre was a little good on Cynthia after this. And I really like Cynthia. I think she's perfect for the show. But I think the ex gonna get his behind whooped. And I wonder why they're not together. Was this who she was crying about when she was on the painting date with Andre and he had to give her his apron to wipe her tears? Because James seemed a little sassy to me. And not like in a gay way or anything. He just took a little too much pleasure in being antagonistic to another grown man. Like, he gives sassy, want to go back, that back and forth, get his point. Like, he seems real antagonistic, to be honest. And that's why I said he must be doing this for the cameras, because I guess he feels he's protected by the crew and security. Because how you going around like that? And don't get me wrong, James isn't completely wrong about Andre. Andre is to Cynthia what Mark Anthony is to Jeffrey. Like a fantasy. So, whew. Like, I guess he's just going along with the get along, and I don't know. But the whole date, like the whole Andre interaction, I really didn't blame him. So I don't know. That's just how I felt. I really didn't blame him. But I know people aren't gonna see it that way. But ultimately, when I make the correlation with Andre and Cynthia and Mark Anthony and Jeffree, what Andre is ideally what Cynthia wants, but Andre isn't for Cynthia. Like, not even remotely. He's not mature enough for Cynthia and her baggage. And the way James went about all that wasn't cool and pleasing to be a part of. But outside of that, they're just not. Come on, y'all. But he does say that James, the ex, says he wants the best for Cynthia because he made her go through a lot in life when she was innocent. Which makes all sense. Because he's no better. So he probably saw a bit of himself in Andre. And again, all that is fine. But I think he still should have watched how he came for Andre. Delivery matters. And Anthony handled James behind. One, I think Anthony is actually ready for something serious. Andre isn't. We know that. Two, Anthony is a dad too. Three, Anthony probably has a much more successful dating experience than Andre. They attract a different kind of woman. I think Anthony actually sees through Cynthia in a good way. Whereas Andre sees Cynthia, likes what he sees, and that's good enough to maintain a connection, at least for the show. When James says he liked talking to Anthony more than Andre, but he was still skeptical, Anthony told him that he understood it because he's a father. Then Anthony was like, all right, I gotta get out of here. I got things to do. And Anthony left such an impression that James didn't even want him to leave. He asked, come on, man, stay 5 more minutes. But Anthony bossed up and told, no, take my information. I'm not going anywhere. And that's the energy Cynthia needs in her life. I loved that, Anthony. I'm not worried about what James's overall opinion on the gentleman was because, like Cynthia said, James wasn't there to get to know them. He was just there to piss them off. And I hope they don't fall back too much because of the ex. I hope Andre and Anthony don't fall back too much. But I wouldn't be surprised if they did. I do like Cynthia. I actually like all of the ladies when Sue-Ann and Jeffree aren't in the room. Oh, but I'm not too much of a fan of Morgan. Jeffree sits with Blue and Mark Anthony to open up about her past relationships. I totally understand why Jeffree won't bring the exes up. Well, bring the exes on the show. They haven't even seen their kids. So the first meeting and conversation they have should not be on a dating show. Yes, I also understand how this can be a little alarming for Blue and Mark Anthony. There's no gentleman in between the relationships. Like, in between that, she hasn't dated anybody, text somebody, kissed somebody else. She already kissed 2 people so far on this show. You mean to tell me in the 3 years she's had single in the past 18 years that she hasn't, there's not one person, not even a casual dating situation with a dude that she just still gets along with to this day? Because let's be real, some of these people bring serious exes and other people just bring someone they had a little fling with. And a fling has a valid perspective worth hearing. There has to be somebody she's spoken with and liked over the years. But are all of Jeffree's past relationships negative? Because that's a red flag, especially since those are the people you bore children with. That's what I would be thinking. And Blue says the same thing I'm thinking by asking, you haven't had any good relationships at all? Exactly. Like, we don't work out with people for a plethora of reasons, right? If every breakup is so traumatic and horrible, you have to really look in the mirror and see what you contributed. I have more guys that I've dated in the past that I get along with than not. Especially when you know y'all aren't meant to work out. Like, I think it's actually cool to have people from your past that you're cordial with. You know, why not? Life is short. Plus, think about it. If Jeffree were a man, ladies, would you really want to date a man that only had bad relationships with women? Do you know what kind of man that would turn out to be? You see this whole thing with Michael B. Jordan being called corny in middle school and all of that. You know, men hang on to every rejection they've received. Do you really want a man that refers to all the women of his past really negatively? And don't let him not get along with his mama. Y'all already know what kind of dude that is. It's the same with Jeffrey. It's the same thing what she's doing. But she's going to receive more sympathy because she's a single mother. But the men she dates, they don't have to overlook her decisions and how those decisions permanently affect her life and could potentially affect their lives. If I were to date a man with 3 kids and none of the mothers in their lives, and none of the mothers are in the children's lives outside of being a widow, my honest first thought would be, this is a lot. Honestly. Look how Mercedes wanted to fall back with Anthony because of the one child who he shares custody of with the other parent. It might sound harsh, but it's a lot. Last season, Sharice was blasted for saying Mike had baggage when he did. He had like 5 kids, 3 baby mamas. So come for me if you like, but Jeffrey comes with baggage. It is what it is. I don't see either man at the table being the match for her. Mark Anthony is in his mid-30s. He's successful. He's handsome. He has no kids. There's no incentive in being with Jeffrey. He'd be giving much more than he received. And Blue is older and has a very social lifestyle, being that he owns lounges and places of that vibe. He's not sitting home, most likely, watching Jeffrey's kids. Blue is closer to 50. He probably likes to be able to move around with no restriction. And Jeffrey may not have that ability because she's a mom first. She has a large responsibility. Because Jeffrey's youngest child is under 4. Just from the math that she told us, if the last relationship lasted 3 years, then she ended up, if the last relationship lasted 3 years when she ended up pregnant, her child has to be under 4. That's the highest, that's the oldest a child can be. Honestly, options are too easily available for both men for them to want to sign up for Jeffrey's show. I'm just speaking objectively. I'm just speaking objectively from optics. I'm not meaning to sound insensitive or anything. But on paper, being real, it doesn't make sense. It'd make more sense for Jeffrey to get with either an older man who is done having kids, but young enough to be able to tolerate a toddler under 4 that's not his. Because Blue is older, right? Pardon. But his lifestyle does not suit looking after somebody else's toddler. Or, ideally, it'd be good for her to be in a blended family situation where her and a dude both have kids who stay in the household, and they can be one happy blended family. Because no matter what, as I've been saying, she needs a reliable father figure in a partner. There's no way around it. I have my opinions on people having kids with multiple people and people having kids out of wedlock. Fine, right? That's my opinion, and I understand that. People can do what they can do with their wombs whatever they want. Fine. But I think Jeffrey is on the wrong show. She wants to date the guy that she likes and could have typically, ideally, have been with had she not had 3 kids. And that's not going to work because she can no longer date for herself. And that limits her in a way that it wouldn't have had she chosen differently. Mark Anthony is not even close to being a viable option. And the fact that Jeffrey's discernment hasn't picked that up yet is alarming. She says Blue didn't handle the conversation well. And that just goes back to my point about Jeffrey thinking she can date who she wants, who she normally date if she were simply a single woman. You're beautiful and everything, Jeffrey. But there are some red flags to take into account with you. Some people are not going to like it, but too bad. You don't get to come as you are in relationships. That's for church. That's God loves all unconditionally. Yes, to church, to God, you come as you are. People think they can go and make all these decisions that bear whatever consequences, and when they're done making these decisions, somebody should come along and jump on board and accept them as they are now. No, your past decisions play a part. Being in 2 serious relationships for 15 years total, which is half her life since she's 32, and bearing 3 kids in these relationships, only to have neither dude involved at all. Not even the dude that's been knowing you since you were a little girl in high school, is eyebrow raising. And not even her baby voice can mask that. But I do have some great things to compliment Jeffrey on later when we get to the meeting she had with Andre. So just hang tight. I promise I am not an anti-Jeffrey person. I do like her a lot more now that she's no longer in the middle of the Blake and Suann drama. So just hold tight. Mercedes and her ex are meeting with Anthony and Mark Anthony. Mark Anthony would have been super entertaining handling Cynthia's ex, James. Mercedes has the 2 best catches on the show. I'm like, go ahead, Mercedes. I think Mercedes and Cynthia are the best catches of the women. The ex starts off well. He stands up to greet and dap up both men. To me, that sets the tone of respect and cordiality. That's how you do it. Anthony appreciates the yin-yang dynamic he has with Mercedes, whereas Mark Anthony says it's his world and we just living in it. He's not concerned about being what somebody else needs. He's more so focused on being what he needs for himself and pretty much fitting a woman into his picture. He's selfish, but I can't say I'm mad at him. He's in an advantageous position. He's a pilot. He's a whole pilot in his mid-30s in Miami. You think Mercedes catches, you think she cares about all these red flags? Mercedes asks was it Mercedes? No. The ex, Mercedes' ex, asks what sort of unfavorable qualities they have. I thought that was a great question. Mark Anthony says he knows he can be hard-headed and stubborn. We can see that for sure. Anthony says he takes risks, but I wasn't sure if he was saying his unfavorable quality was that he takes risks or if it was his unfavorable quality was that he did not take risks. But we don't even get to dive into it because he has to go tend to his daughter. And I said it. I already said it. He is very intentional with his time and his energy because he doesn't have a lot of it. He's probably equally respectful as well of other people's time because he understands the scarcity of time. The ex was cool. Mercedes' ex was cool. He was my favorite of all of them. Mercedes asks who he would choose for her if he had to. He says Mark Anthony isn't a husband and that Anthony is ready for life. I said that too. Anthony's confidence, his assuredness, his readiness. Anthony isn't playing games. That's why he's so calm and collected. Anthony gets his way with the ladies. He has, his confidence and his demeanor is just infectious. But it doesn't matter. Mercedes thinks Mark Anthony is such a cutie. Mark Anthony. He's such a cutie, so he'll probably remain number 1 for her despite what the ex said. Suann and her ex are meeting with Blake and Anthony. I don't know why Anthony was there. And I laughed when Blake said Anthony was there to add comedic value. It is kind of true because it is funny that Anthony's even there. It's even funny that Blake is there. And it's even funny that Suann is there and still on the show. That was probably the first piece of personality we've gotten from Blake all season. When the ex stated family was important, Anthony echoed that and mentioned he's the oldest of 10 kids. I'm the eldest myself. So I get it. Eldest siblings stand up. We need our flowers. And we need a parental appreciation day for raising our siblings. People don't talk about that. Some of us grew up faster because we had little siblings. We set a permanent example. And we get privileges early because it's necessary. I had to get my license at 16 because I had to help drive the siblings around, pick them up from school, drive them to church. But the minute I wanted to go to the 18 and up club with my girls, I couldn't. I was only good enough to drive the kids around. I tell you, parents, y'all. But with Anthony being the eldest of his siblings, it does explain his demeanor. Anthony has real ish on his plate, probably. And they all do. We all do, right? Anthony probably values his time and space and energy the most of everyone here so far. Remember, the ladies complained that Anthony wasn't as communicative and as available as some of the other men. Anthony is probably one of those dudes who doesn't deal with messy women. He's not messing with no Morgan type chick who could nair his head. And had she done that, he's probably the type to not even raise his voice. He probably just ask her to leave and never speak to her again, which in turn would have her begging for him back, but he'd be long gone. I think he seems so sure of himself and his peace. And I'm assuming and projecting my own experience as an eldest sibling on him. But being an eldest sibling, I think, greatly contributes to his demeanor. And maybe his zodiac, perhaps. And his overall upbringing. Blake says he has to gauge the family dynamic and see if it fits. And I already know a lot of people don't like Blake, so they're not going to like what he's saying. But look at what happened with Cynthia and her child's father at the dinner. James is a permanent fixture in Cynthia's life, and that's her family. And after that encounter, I'd want nothing to do with her family. So yes, I need to gauge your people before committing to you and them, because I'm not entering a situation on defense with people who aren't even, like, you're going to always be in this person's life, but you're not my family. If I don't mesh with the people who are most important to you, I'm not sticking around. I don't have time for tension with people that are not my family. It's not that deep. And I know people can still be with somebody, be on some Romeo and Juliet where the parents defy the relationship. I don't have time for that. I'm a family-oriented person. I want my families to be able to get together. I don't want tension. I don't play that. I know I'm respectful. I know my family is respectful. Long as your people come respectful, we're good. But that tension, I don't blame Blake. No. I have to gauge the dynamic first before I know anything about what I want to do with this person. When Suan's ex asked Blake how did his last relationship end, which was a very clear and direct question, Difficult Blake says that's an open-ended question and he needed more context. You asked me how my last relationship ended. I can go immediately into literally why we broke up and what our temperaments were once it happened. It's very simple. So the ex digresses and then asks how does Blake handle conflict between him and his partner. Blake says he doesn't do conflict. Then he says some other stuff that was a bunch of fluff, still had me puzzled. Blake was pussyfooting around. First off, when someone says, I don't do conflict as it relates to any relationship, they're full of it. They're probably the most conflicting person. Conflict is inevitable in any relationship. It's pretty normal. It's abnormal to constantly have conflict, but it's abnormal to have too much of pretty much anything. Conflict can show up in many ways that aren't necessarily terrible. There's a such thing as healthy conflict. So saying, I don't do conflict really is like saying, I don't do difference of opinions. There won't be any conflicts. Because what I say goes. Suan's ex likes both dudes, but he's leaning more towards Anthony. Says that Blake reminds him of himself 20 years ago, but he isn't convinced that Blake and Suan are looking for the same thing. And also, Blake just talks too much without saying anything at all. Marcia and her ex are meeting with Tony and Blue. The ex asks what about her captured their attention. Tony says she's smart, intelligent, and beautiful. That's what like an elementary school, a fifth grader will write on his Valentine's Day card to his crush. For real. You're smart, intelligent, and beautiful. I want him to go. Blue says their conversations are really good. That's it. I bet Marcia's ex is thinking, why are we here? Y'all don't even like her like that. We know doggone well Marcia is not ready for a serious relationship. And these men are only sitting here to keep their options open on the show. The ex asks where they put Marcia in the big picture. And Blue says she's in the number 1, number 2 spot on his list. And she says it's a cop out. But honestly, I believe him because there's no one else. There's literally Marcia and Jeffrey, 1 and 2. He doesn't want to take either of them seriously. But technically, they are his top 2 connections because they're his only 2. The ex thinks Blue is playing coy, and that's because he is. He doesn't like Marcia seriously. He may like her for the bedroom and for these dates that are sponsored by the show, but that's about it. And the ex thinks that Tony is direct and has no filter when communicating. And it's like interesting because Tony is direct, right, with no filter, but yet he's also a BSer. You know, he also says a bunch of nothing as well. He's both direct and like full of fluff. Marcia just needs to go home. Suann needs to go home. Tony needs to go home. Blake needs to go home. Jeffrey's man isn't there, so she needs to go home. We're 7 episodes in, and we can actually afford to cut the show at episode 8. That's how obvious the lack of connections and readiness for serious relationships on this season are. This is probably the worst season to date as it relates to genuine love connections on the show. Andre and Jeffrey are having a one-on-one since she didn't bring her ex to the show. But I'm thinking, why wasn't Andre at the conversation that Jeffrey had with Blue and Mark Anthony if he was such a strong connection? Because it seemed like the purpose of the conversation was to tell the men that would have met her ex why they weren't meeting the ex. So would Andre not have met the ex? But we're at his place and he cooks. And I thought that was a quite intimate and romantic gesture. His place looks really nice and it looks lived in, not like an Airbnb. And I will say, we can make fun of Jeffrey's baby voice. This is where I'm going to compliment her. We can make fun of her baby voice all we want, but it is getting her somewhere with these men. I think she does a great job of still making the men feel needed, even though she is a single mother of 3. And I think that's something men are looking for. That's why dating older women is sometimes not appealing. They know it all. They've seen it all. They're stuck in their ways of doing things, you know, especially when they're more established. Jeffrey plays a great damsel in distress. She rests in her feminine and she makes it clear she needs a man. And I think it's actually quite wise of her. And I believe it's genuine. She shows the men appreciation for their acts of service or for how they make her feel. And that keeps a man wanting to keep doing it. On the contrary, look at someone like Morgan. She's annoying. She's worrying about other women. She's childish and she's with the drama. You give her your full undivided attention. She literally uses that time with her. She's the oldest one on the show. She uses that time to talk about other women. Nothing is enough to make Morgan secure. Jeffrey has the most kids on the show and is one of the youngest singles. And she still has the confidence that says she will snatch any man in there, even with her basketball team in tow. And Andre's food was good, according to her. He feeds her. And yes, she's acting like a baby. But what I think her mentality is like, I take care of 3 kids all day with no help. So I need somebody to take care of me. And I think she appreciates and craves a man nurturing her. And honestly, men love feeling needed. Whether you think it's wrong or not, wrong or right, I'm just saying what it is. I think she's doing, at the end of the day, if you are a woman who likes men, it will behoove you to do what men like. And she's behaving in a manner that they're attracted to. And that's the goal, right? So you can't hate on it. And also, Jeffrey was eating small bites. I don't like a lot of food per bite myself. It really grosses me out. My boyfriend will have double the food and eat it in half the time that I do because I take little rabbit bites. I've always been like that. They also share, Andre and Jeffrey, a very nice kiss. Jeffrey is 2 for 2 for the best kisses on the show. The one with Mark Anthony, and Andre. Andre had all her lipstick on his lips. They were getting down, but she says after the date, all she could think is, when are we getting married? So we see Jeffrey's discernment may not have impaired over the years. Because what? We almost can see her. We almost can see why her behind is in her predicament. She seems to melt for the slightest sweet talk. She just wants a man. She just wants to feel safe. And any dude, it seems like, that can provide that at face value can just potentially win her over. Because there are many things about Andre and Jeffrey that make them highly incompatible. The ladies are in the lounge looking gorgeous. Morgan has on this interesting bralette. It looks like she's wearing a blazer with a carnival costume underneath. Everything is going to plan with the ladies recounting what happened until we get to Jeffrey. And then Jeffrey says her and Andre have a soulmate vibe thing going. Jeffrey isn't done bumping her head, I see. Marcia places Blue in her bottom, which is smart. She's right. He's had ample opportunity to romance her. So if he hasn't done it by now, it's probably because he isn't interested. My guess is Mark Anthony and Blue will be in the bottom and Blue will go home. But it ends up being Blake and Blue in the bottom. I like how that sounds. Like black and blue, Blake and Blue, Blake and Blue. And I'm thinking Blake is going home. Blue and Marcia are meeting, and Blue hasn't done anything different or anything at all since meeting Marcia's ex. Get him out of here. He is not here to work. She expresses the lady's concern about him not being present, affectionate, communicative, nothing. Blake is meeting with Sue-Ann, and Blake is right. He lives in the bottom. I don't care. I like Blake. He's not that bad to me, and I stand by that. I think he's just misunderstood. He's not good for TV, and his woman isn't on this show. But she explains to him the feedback from the women. Shockingly, they sent Blue home. And that's how we know this show is heavily produced. The fact that the producers don't even see how we'd see that as the audience, the producers are heavily producing this is actually insulting. What season has had a contestant be in the bottom for what 4 times and still get to stay? Plus, who is Blake's connection other than Sue-Ann? But Blake said him and Sue-Ann operate as a team, and that's the extent of their relationship. Teamwork, co-workers, to stay on the show. Nothing romantic. Look at the whack kiss they even gave at when she told him he was still ready to love. Absolutely no chemistry. Next week, the men have to introduce the women to their best friends, and it's going to get interesting, and we'll be right here to talk ish about it. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate your time and attention, and I'll see y'all for the next review. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. All right, bye.